Hi there, I'm Claire McDonnell Liu and this is the Family Health Lab. I'm about to talk to Dr. Jen Unwin. Jen is a clinical psychologist with the NHS for over 30 years. She's also an author and a food addiction specialist. In this conversation, we're going to be chatting about how food addiction could be at the root of your food or health or your weight challenges and the simple steps that she suggests we can all make.
You're listening to the Family Health Lab. Healthy parents, healthy kids.
Hi Jen, thank you so much for popping on. It's lovely to see you and your bright jumper.
Thank you. Yes, from the freezing wastes of the northern England. Oh yeah, I'm really happy to talk to you. It's lovely to see you.
Yeah, we saw each other really briefly at the PHC conference, and that was on the back of your really exciting food addiction conference. And that must have been a busy week, but a really exciting time. And how did it go for you?
Yeah, it was a lot of work, but it was fantastic. So in the week running up, we had a 4-day intensive at a place nearby where the conference was being run with Bitten Jonsson. So it was people who were either professionals or they identified as having a food addiction problem, and they came to spend 4 days with Bitten, and all the food was beautiful, low carb, keto food, real food. And so that was amazing. And obviously we've been following those people up over the last 6 months and seeing what amazing things they're getting up to and how they're getting on. And then the conference itself, which as far as we know was the first sort of academic type, clinical type conference in food addiction, anywhere in the world, we think. And so that was amazing. So again, we had Bitten talking and some other amazing sort of international speakers, as well as some homegrown people. And if people want to watch that, it's available on the Public Health Collaboration website. Yeah, some of the speakers were very amazing. Paul Early's talk was absolutely mind-blowing about the sort of what happens in the brain, basically, which I think is at the heart of this debate, really, that that sugar in my view, in my humble opinion, and lots of other people think so too, but we need to get the word out there that sugar is actually a psychoactive drug. It's not neutral, it's not a treat. It is a treat, but for all the wrong reasons. And we just need to be really mindful of that. Some of us have got big issues with it and have had to sort of quit completely. I think if people are sort of earlier on the journey, or if they are raising children, it's just so important to be mindful of the fact that sugar isn't a neutral, fun, give our kids a treat thing. It's something we need to think really seriously how much sugar we're giving our kids, as well as ultra processed food, just because not just the effects physically but mentally. We love our kids, don't we? We want to bring them up to be the best they can be and as happy as they can be. And yeah, I have regrets. Regrets. I should probably burst into song here, but if I knew then what I knew now, I would have done some things very differently. But hey ho, here we are, and trying to spread the word. So yeah, it was amazing, and it's just lovely to see some of those people in person that I'd been working with online. Some of the guys from America that came over that I'd never even met. In fact, I'd never met Bitten Jonsson, and yet I've done her course, and we'd never actually met in person. So that was super, super special, isn't it? When you meet someone that you admire so much and you meet them in person, it's always better than Zoom, isn't it?
Yeah, when you're in a room in a conference, and for me, I love the conferences. I just geek out, but also it's just such a feeling to meet your tribe and be part of that. But you touched on a number of kind of key issues around this addiction topic. Sugar addiction, it isn't official yet. We don't have it. But how far along the road are we to getting it established as an addiction, as gambling is a recognised addiction and addictions are now recognised? There's a bit of pushback. So where are we with that journey?
Yeah, what a great question. think there's yeah, as you say, so it's not officially recognised by the two bodies that would need to recognise it, or even, I mean, one of them. I think if one did, I think that's game over, really. I think the others would. So there's the American Psychiatric Association, who hosts the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for Mental Disorders. As you say, they've now recognised gambling addiction, which of course doesn't even have a substance. It's a behavioural addiction. That's a help, because I believe that food addiction is a substance problem, and that the substance is sugar, but that's the sort of beginning of it, and then it sort of widens out and can include other foods as well. But a lot of it is also behavioural. And then the other body is the World Health Organization, who hosts the ICD, which is the International Classification of Diseases. And Heidi Yaver, who's a nutritionist colleague, last year coordinated a submission to the ICD. We did get rebuffed, which wasn't really too surprising, but it was a good place to start. And also we could see from their response, obviously they have to tell you why it's turned down, what are the key areas to continue focusing on. Withdrawal symptoms is one of the criteria for addiction. Do humans get withdrawal symptoms? Well, there wasn't really much research. I think you and I would definitely say, well, of course they do. And anyone who's listening who's tried to quit sugar, I think we're all going to say you get withdrawal symptoms, physical and mental ones. But but there's research ongoing. So all the time the body of research is growing. So we've recently published a paper, as you know, and that just adds to it. More and more people, I think, both on the science but also on the public health side, are recognising. I mean, obviously we've had people like Lustig for ages saying, sugar's addictive, and we need to sort of treat it like that. So there's more and more people campaigning for it. So I'm hopeful that in my lifetime,
people action is really important, and we've seen the changes over the last 10 years.
In a way, if you just get on and do the work and help people, it's a sort of ground up movement. So low carbs for diabetes and type 1 has been a sort of ground up. People do it, they get amazing results, they talk about it, they post on social media. Some people have written books, and it sort of becomes a thing from the ground up. And I think the sugar addiction thing's going to be a bit like that. It's people saying, yes, it's a thing, I've got it. There's starting up, there's lots, there weren't any support groups a few years ago. I mean, none of us had really heard about it 5 years ago. And in fact, one of the things that was in the response from the WHO, one of the reasons was kind of, I'm paraphrasing, was kind of, it's just too difficult. It would just cause too many problems to acknowledge that food addiction is a legitimate condition because of the implications. So that's interesting, isn't it?
It is interesting, and it's disappointing. It's seems like a bit of a failing, really, to say, well, that's too hard, so
yes,
we'll let people suffer. So that's why the work that you're doing and your colleagues and all of these connections that you're making are massively important. You mentioned just earlier that you have regrets, and I'm sure a lot of us do. But you've also said openly that you're a food addict, and is that a relief to get to that point where you can say that and feel like you understand the pathway that was a big part of your life?
Yeah, it really, really, really does. So I probably sort of recognised that finally about six years ago, and since then I've been, trying to learn everything about it. Decided to do Bitten's course, and then was starting to help other people. So I was definitely on a path to try and understand it. And what's ironic, of course, is that I'm a clinical psychologist, so trained for many years, and there was a reasonable amount of training on addiction, obviously, because that's what we deal with a lot in clinical practice, is addiction to substances like drugs and alcohol, but also behavioural addictions like gambling. I knew about all of that. And denial's an incredible thing, isn't it? Obviously, I just didn't put two and two together. But when I first heard Bitten talking about, I think on the Diet Doctor website, about sugar addiction and the behaviours of addiction, it suddenly all fell into place and the scales fell from my eyes in terms of, right, well, that describes my relationship with sugars and ultra processed foods perfectly, in that I've never been able to moderate, not since I was I mean, this thing started probably when I was 5 or 6. I can't really remember a time when I wasn't really obsessed with sweet things and how I could get my hands on them. But then, of course, what happens is that when you get to sort of teenage years, you try and manage that by you learn all about dieting. I learned about dieting from my mum, who's, looking back now, she's not with us, unfortunately, so I can't discuss it with her. But looking back now, she was totally a sugar addict, and I'm sure she would admit it if she was here today. And so she struggled with her weight all her life and was yo-yo dieting thing. So I learned that off her as a teenager. Let's go on a diet. We used to go on these diets together, terrible things like egg and grapefruit diets and all these awful things. And she was trying to help. I don't hold that against her at all. She was absolutely trying to help me. But that just set up a whole lifetime of yo-yo dieting, because I was quite a determined, organised person. So I'd set off on this latest scheme, whatever it was, would lose the weight, get down to sort of reasonable weight. But then, of course, the day always comes when you can't live on egg and grapefruit forever. So you have to try and and I'd never understood, this was before even the low carb days, so I'd never understood about carbohydrates and insulin and appetite, and obviously this addiction piece as well. So the minute I went back to trying to eat normally as per the guidelines, it would all go pear-shaped again. And I just for a while would put on weight until I loathed myself so much I would find the next crazy scheme and do that. It was an incredible relief to think, I'm not actually a crazy person. I've got this problem with addiction. And I can, there's a whole new thing there to understand. And also, if it is an addiction, of course, the implication is that you abstain from the drug. And so I'd kind of been doing that, obviously, with low carb. I really had made big steps just by being low carb, but I still struggled to keep on that bandwagon the whole time, particularly, of course, because I was a food addict, and I'd loved baking and cooking, of course, because I was a food addict. The temptation of all the keto baking stuff which people do, and I'm not criticising people that do it, because some people can do it and that's fine, it's part of their lives, and they can absolutely reach their health and psychological goals doing that. But of course, for a food addict, anything like that, you just have more and more. So the solution is abstinence. So you just think of it like alcohol. I often explain it like that to people. So you'd never say to a person with alcohol problems, right, well, it's your birthday, so you can just have a little bit of whiskey. I mean, it's just absurd, and we all understand that it is. So for those of us with a genuine food addiction problem, it's no good for us saying, it's my birthday, I'll just have a little bit of food. It's just everywhere, isn't it? In our society, it's just put in our faces, it's advertised, it's at work, people are going to the workplace and there's biscuits and people baking cupcakes. Every single celebration in our calendars is focused these days around atrocious processed food. So birthdays, anniversaries, Valentine's, Easter, Christmas, they all involved a kind of feast of cake and chocolate and nonsense, which I used to love. So it's everywhere. And also, if somebody knew you had an alcohol problem, they literally wouldn't say to you, just have one. They would know that wasn't a kind thing to do. But I think because people don't understand about food addiction or see it as a serious problem, you'll have people in your family and your friends coming up to you saying, because they've not got this problem, which is fine. They'll come up and they'll say, oh, just have a bit, I made it especially for you. It's your birthday. So we get that sort of pressure. So there's all of that pressure, plus the facts that, in relevance to what we're talking about today, which is families, is that we're exposed to sugar before we can remember. And I don't know if people have seen that. There's if you go on YouTube and Google baby's first ice cream, you see the parents give this baby, it's only probably about 16 months old or something like that. It's only a sort of toddly type person, and they give it an ice cream, and this baby grabs onto the ice cream and his eyes go like this, and you can kind of literally see that it's a dopamine hit in the brain. So we've had, literally this psychoactive substance from really young. We don't give our kids nicotine and alcohol, so it's not normalized. It's not developing those pathways in the brain that we do with sugar. And not only that, but this is where the regrets come in, isn't it? Is that we do use sugar as a sort of reward, celebration, comfort.
Yeah, all of that. And when you were saying about people wouldn't offer a drink to an alcoholic or packet of cigarettes to somebody knowing that they're trying to quit. But with food, as a nutritionist, the clients that I see who are trying to get rid of this and they're doing really, really well, a lot of it isn't about telling them about the food and a lot of the work is helping them manage those obstacles. And that's
90%. It's 90% of the work.
It's amazing. It's not giving them the leaflet and saying off you go.
So powerful.
It's like, how am I going to cope with this relationship? Yeah. And I've had one particular client comes to mind, Sharon, and she lost 3 different groups of friends. She lost her morning tea group, who kind of pushed her out her at work. She lost her cocktail hard drinking buddies because they were just ridiculing her and being really unkind when she joined them. And then there was another set of friends that she would meet at the weekend, and they'd go for a walk and they'd go for a big lunch, and she just wanted food out of the picture while she healed and managed, and that was just such a strong reaction. Each of those friendship groups kind of pushed her to one side because it's something it can be quite confronting when somebody changes their health and their diet, their nutrition.
And often our because we've got that, we had that kind of romantic, it's like a romance, isn't it? We had that romance with food, so we loved other people that did as well, and we would mix with those kinds of people, and we would cook for them and they would cook for us, so it became part of that part of our lives in a really enmeshed way. So when we try and change that, as you say, it's confronting because other people, they're often addicts as well. This happens to people with alcohol, doesn't it? They have to give up that friendship group because that's never going to work out. It can be the same, that people they'll be pushed back because they don't want to face it themselves, that they have a problem with it, with their relationship with food, so they're going to try and push you back.
So food is more complex, and I think it's just such a fascinating area of this addiction because it is, as social, so many emotions, and we rely on it for rewards and a pick me up and a treat and a consolation, all of that. How have you changed your habits, and what have you had to leave behind?
Oh yeah, great question. When I first went low carb, I did do it like cold turkey, because that's the kind of, I'm a bit black and white in that way. I couldn't do the slowly thing that David did actually, where he kind of flirted with it, and then over time he's really, really embraced it. So I did the cold turkey thing and got the whole kind of feeling ghastly for about a week, but then felt amazing. So that was, I think if people can get through the withdrawals and get to the other side and get that amazing feeling that you get when you've I think that can really help, because you feel so well. You think, right, I do want to do this long term, and that becomes the motivation. What is it that you want in your life long term? This feeling of kind of well-being and better mood and better energy and all of those things. But then it is this matter of just to keep moving in the right direction, keep practicing. So we all fall off the wagon. That's part of the journey. And that's how you learn. I often say in the groups that I run with Heidi, it's a bit like, how do you learn to ride a bike? How does a child learn to ride a bike? By falling off. They don't get on the bike and ride off into the sunset. They get on, they fall off to the left, and because they want to ride a bike, they get back on and they have another go and they fall off to the right. And then they get back on and they wobble to the left, but then they can pull it back and they wobble to, and we learn by this sort of wobbling. So I've for sure, like everybody else who's on this journey, done a lot of wobbling. Ultimately, life in the food, in those foods, is not alive, really, psychologically and physically and emotionally and all of those things, because you kind of it becomes the focus, and there's all that sort of busyness in your mind about food all the time, which detracts from your relationships with people. It detracts from all the other goals that you have in life, etc., etc. So, so low carb was the first step in learning how to do that. And then I've been so lucky because, of course, David's done it as well. He's adopted it as a lifestyle. So, it's so much easier when you live in a family that is supporting you, and even better doing it with you. But I think sometimes you just have to start and be the example, if you like, so that other people can come on board. And then the other lucky thing was we didn't push it on our kids at all. I did it, and I would try and cook meals where what I could do. So we had the youngest was still at home at the time, and he was a teenager. And so what I would do is I'd cook my meal, whatever it was, the meat and vegetables. And then if he wanted some microwave rice or, something else, we could easily add that in. But interestingly, he just eventually decided himself that he was just going to do what we did. And the older kids do it as well now. And also
that's awesome.
The eldest and the grandchildren. Yeah. So the eldest daughter's got 4 grandchildren. She's bringing them up low carb, keto, and she had 2 or 3 of the pregnancies were completely keto, low carb. I think it was 3. I think it was the last 3 pregnancies. When we started, I was doing the old keto baking thing. It took me a lot. Sweeteners, I tell you, they were another whole level of challenge to give up sweeteners. And I did keep going back to things like Diet Coke and as a treat, and like sugar-free gum and stuff like that. Anyway, in the end, no, because it always escalated and it always led to more cravings. So I have now managed to completely quit the sweeteners.
That carb creep can come up, and also we're seeing more and more information coming about the sweeteners. It's on one level, it's that your sweet palate, if you can kind of bring that down and down and down, and your need for the sweet taste, that helps. But also we're having reports coming out and more studies into the harmful effects of sweeteners. But with working with different people in it, you with your groups, I meet them where they are and go for the low hanging fruit first and the kind of biggest ticket items, and then some people do kind of maintain their weight loss with the sweeteners. But I do, if at the next level, if they want to go further, I do encourage that. But to drop those out.
It's so individual, isn't it? You think so you're right. I think you start with the low hanging fruit, and then see, people don't have to cut them out and be cut everything out and be very puritanical right from the start. It's actually quite good to go and see where do you get to, where you get to a point where you're peaceful in your hairs about food. You're kind of eating to live, not living to eat, as they say. And you can sort of have your meal, move on with the day, and you're just seeing food as fuel.
It's so individual. So when I cut out sugar completely a while ago, I noticed that I was going out meeting somebody for coffee and I wasn't ordering a brownie or cake, and that I was just noticing that I wasn't looking past somebody at the food arriving, and when they were going to kind of let us at the buffet, and those things I just realised afterwards that I had more cravings and more potentially addictive pathways than I had realised, and I hadn't clocked it at all. until it was gone and I was free from it, which you mentioned, the lovely feeling of freedom from food, going long periods without thinking about it. It was amazing. So how do you know if
chatter?
The chatter. How do you know, how do you recognise that if you're a food addict?
So there are 6 criteria for addiction, and these are the ones from the WHO, but they apply so perfectly to food. And Heidi and I have come up with this sort of mnemonic, which is CR.A.V.E.D. So it's easy to remember what the symptoms are. And if you get 3 or more of these, there's probably a bit of an issue there. C is for compulsion, basically the cravings and the compulsion. So say you were, you'd gone out for your coffee with your friend and you were thinking, right, well, I've just had my breakfast, so I don't need a cake really. And then you sit down and they've got one, and you get this overriding sort of cravings and urges, and you were thinking you weren't going to, but you sort of have this compulsion that you have to have that cake, even though you logically had decided that you didn't want to, and you go ahead and buy it, and afterwards you kind of have regrets. So it's this compulsion to eat that you don't feel in control of. And I can remember, days like that, deciding on a Monday, right, no more biscuits kind of thing, coming home from work and literally watching my hand reach for a biscuit that I was logically thinking I didn't want, but the primal brain takes over, and there's these compulsions that you can't resist. So C is for compulsions. R is reaching for more, and this gets at the idea of tolerance. So people recognise, don't they, the idea of tolerance to alcohol, that if you drink a glass of wine every night, you soon get so used to that you probably going to start having 2 glasses of wine every night to get the same sort of nice, relaxed, tipsy feeling, and that our bodies and brains adjust to the level of the drug, and also some prescription drugs, we can create a tolerance to. So the same idea for food is that, maybe, one slice of cake was enough at one time, but it's become 2 or 3, or you're sneaking back and you're actually having half a cake before you get that feeling that you're looking for. So it's the idea of tolerance. A is for activities avoided, and that's where you've got to the point where food has become such the focus of your life that you've started to kind of pull back from other things. So you've sort of maybe stop going out because you'd rather stay in and eat on your own. You don't want people to watch you eating. You've kind of given up on, used to go swimming, but you've given up on that. So pulling in and that you're, we're talking about this, you're thinking about and planning about food all the time, and it's sort of taking up more and more. So it's other activities like social activities, family activities, and maybe even work is sort of being squeezed by the food. V is for volume, and this is where you have more than you intend regularly. So this thing we do to kid ourselves where we say, I'm buying that packet of biscuits for the grandchildren. I'll just have one before they come. Then you end up having loads. So it's volume, always having more volume than you intend. E stands for exclusion, and this is the withdrawal symptoms piece. So when you try and exclude those foods, do you suffer? Do you get shaky, headaches, anxious, gastrointestinal problems, sleep problems, just basically feeling rough? Does that happen when you either can't get your hands on something? It's that kind of hangry thing. I remember I used to get so much when I had to eat really regularly when I was high carb, and I was always thinking, right, where can I, I need to get some, something, because I'm going to kind of hypo.
Such a recognised term, hangry, isn't it?
Hangry.
Most people have got an example of they can really clearly remember themselves in a situation.
Yeah, being super hangry.
Yeah.
Unreasonable kind of crazy behaviour. I'm never like that now, not around food anyway. And then the last one, D, is for damage, and this is, I think, the absolute defining one. So continuing to use food, or have these foods that you have to eat, despite being aware that it's doing you some harm, either physically, because you've maybe got type 2 diabetes or obesity or some other condition that it's worsening physically, or mentally, that you know that mentally over time you're getting worse and worse, but you're still, and the food is part of the problem, but you continuing to use because it's giving you that little bit of a boost. And there is reasons why high sugar diets are more likely to make us depressed and anxious, because we get these big dopamine and serotonin hits when we eat sugary foods, but the brain doesn't really like those high levels, so it knocks out a few receptors. So what happens over time is, even though you get this brief nice feeling, over time, every time you repeat that, you're going to make it harder for yourself to have the right amount of dopamine and serotonin in the brain from your general sort of daily activities. So we know that people on high sugar diets are more likely to be depressed. So continuing to use despite damage is D. So it's those 6 criteria are what to look out for. And as I say, particularly, I think once you think, oh, maybe I should cut down for my health, but then you're really struggling to do it alone. I think that's a really kind of a big warning sign, and time to reach out, get some help, get some support. It's absolutely not your fault. We always say to people, this addiction thing, there's a big genetic susceptibility, so it often runs in families. Like my mom was a food addict. We often talk to people whose dads had an alcohol problem or some other addiction problems if you look into the family tree. So it's often this sort of tendency. And then the world is crazy. Like when the scales have fallen from your eyes about the food environment, you just think, what are we doing? All poisoning ourselves and kind of celebrating it along the way. So it's not your fault. You've had the wrong advice. You've not been told it could be an addiction problem. And once you know that, you can, it can be quite hard to do it on. I mean, some people do it on their own, and hats off, but really it's so much better to find a community of people who are doing this and get their support, or get the support of someone who really understands it, and go from there. You can get free of it. I know loads of people who have. It's not easy. It isn't easy, and nobody's saying, but it is worth it. It's definitely worth it.
Particularly if we're parents and we've got children around us and we're doing this for ourselves and we recognise this in ourselves, then potentially modelling good eating patterns for our children. I mean, I'm really concerned about what I've seen in schools. When you were talking about the volume and you needing more and more. I mean, I've been in schools and seen children, and they buy and bring into school 2 packs of custard creams, 2 whole packs of biscuits, and sit and eat them. And, talking about volume and dose and what we're doing to the next generation. I mean, even the amount of sugar in a soft drink that you're giving at your kids' sports club. Taking action for yourself is the support out there.
It's the start.
If somebody wanted to get started today, is there some straightforward actions, really simple steps that they could put in place?
Number one, I would say, maybe. So I've wrote a little book in lockdown called Fork in the Road, and it's aimed at the general public, but also, if there's any professionals listening who want to learn a bit more about it, all the things that we're talking about here are in the book about the, what happens in the brain and how to get started and so on. And all of the struggles about what you do when you're going out with friends, or what you do if you go on holiday. There's loads of advice in there. And all the profits for that book go to the Public Health Collaboration in the UK. I think you can get it in Australia if you've got Amazon, haven't you? And it's a sort of print service. So it's on Amazon and they just would deliver it to your home.
It is a great resource. It has case studies and examples that would probably resonate with different people, and a number of different people have contributed to it. It's got gorgeous recipes and really explains, as you said, the brain chemistry and what's happening. I really do think it's centred very much around it, that it isn't your fault, and then the steps to kind of healing and managing it long term, which isn't a straight journey, a linear path. There's ups and downs and challenges. No, it's a very honest book. You're really sharing my experience as well.
And the experience of so Bitten Jonsson, who we've mentioned a few times, has contributed to that book, and some other guys in the States that are doing this work. They tell their, and Georgia Eade, who's the psychiatrist who uses keto for mental health, she contributed as well, which was absolutely lovely. And we've also brought out the journal now. So if people want to read the book and then journal about what they're doing, which can be really helpful just for that accountability. If you want to find online communities, there's a few that I'd recommend now. Most of the resources are in the back of the book as well. So there's SugarX Global, who I trained with as well, and they have a community. I mean, you have to pay a bit, but some things are worth investing in. There's also the guys that we wrote the paper with, Sweet Sobriety. People really need to, I think about getting support, because it is so hard and it's a long journey. And it's wonderful to be doing this with people who are doing the same thing, who, when you say, I used to get food out of the dustbin, they go, oh yeah, me too. They don't go, oh, you're disgusting, which is always our fear when we're being addicted to something, that we've done some things we're really ashamed of. So it's not our fault. There are other people like us in the world who really have struggled with this all their lives, and they're trying to be on this journey as well. And then, as you say, 90% of it isn't about the food. Once you've got the food nailed, it's about focusing on, right, previously we've got all our dopamine and serotonin, oxytocin and endorphins we've got from food. That's been our sort of comfort blanket, our kind of go-to in times of both celebration and misery. What are we going to do instead? You have to develop some other behaviours that are sort of healthy, because if there's just a vacuum for those things, you're going to go back to it. You're going to be pulled back to it more easily. So the rest of the recovery journey is about all of that, really. What new friends are you going to make? Your lovely client there who's had to lose all these people. What hobbies can she take up, or what other friendship groups she sounds quite good at making friends, so she can make a new group of friends.
Well, and she did, and that's it. Being a nutritionist, we spent a lot of time talking about what else she could do, and giving. Yeah. And she took up yoga. She joined a walking group, and she joined a gym, and she got those boosts from fresh air, from time outdoors, from new friendships, and people with the same goals, people with the same goals, and being inclusive and being in a community. But there was sadness within her about those friendships and those. But eventually, that hopefully will kind of rekindle when she's stronger and she can kind of go out with them and not and they can kind of take her how she is as well. But that's a big
if they
part
can,
of it, isn't it?
Absolutely. And building these other things. I was going to say things like yoga are absolutely brilliant, because they kind of you get, that's kind of proven, yes, serotonin, yoga, any form of exercise. But I think what's really nice about yoga is that sort of connection to the body and the mind, and that often people with food addiction problems have been so in their head, and they've sort of really lost touch with loving their bodies at the sort of basic level, and particularly if they've become very overweight or type 2 diabetes, their bodies have kind of let them down, or their relationship with their body not so good. So I think yoga's lovely. I do yoga, but any form of exercise, getting outside, singing, anything that's going to give you that natural feel good, that the things that maybe you once loved and you've stopped doing, or you as a child you thought you might like to do. It's never too late, is it? It's never too late to learn the piano, or have a singing lessons, or whatever art, tap dancing, art, whatever it is. Oh, and I'm all about the knitting. That's my other thing. And here is I'm going to show you. It's my wall of yarn. My wall of yarn.
Ooh, what are we? Yes, it is. What are you creating?
Well, there's always something on the needles. So I've just made a hat for the second grandchild, Leo, who's 9. He's got a cold head, so I've just made him a hat. And then I'm making a sort of nice scarfy thing for myself. So I always have something on the needles.
So just to close, what would you like people to know? Is there a message out, from you who've been through this journey, and you're building all these amazing resources, and that you have the wonderful book, Fork in the Road. But what would you like somebody who was maybe in your position 10, 15 years ago, to know about the journey ahead.
There's absolutely hope. There's absolutely hope for food freedom. And it's not that, I mean, I still love my food. I think that's the other thing to say, isn't it? It's not, I really look forward to eating my real food meals, the kind of recipes that are in the book. So I still enjoy my food, but I can just get on with the rest of my life without this endless. So just to give people hope that it's definitely possible. Take a chance and just keep trying, and don't. The main thing is don't beat yourself up if you have a little lapse or a slip. Just get back up, get back on the bike, get back going in the right direction, and find yourself this community of people who are trying to do the right thing, the same thing. That makes such a difference. So yeah, definitely.
Thank you. That will buoy them up, hope, and it's not their fault. Thank you so much for what you're doing in this space. I find it really, really important, and yeah, I love it. So, and if anybody wants to see your delicious recipes and your meals, you post them on Twitter, and I'll put a link to your book. But Thank you so much for your time, Jen.
You're so welcome, Claire.